So, it seems as though you found yourself at the campsite of the Orator. Well, as you can see, I have stoked the fire, which means it's time for you to pull up your chair, settle in, because I have another tale to tell. The myth of the mystic doctor has been around forever. You have an ailment, a malady that cannot be cured. You see all of the doctors, all of the specialists, and there's nothing anyone can do. Until you hear about some mystic, some person who can do some kind of holy healing. And you go visit them and suddenly you're cured. It's a story that everybody's heard. But if you were to visit the suburbs of Amman, Jordan, you just might find such a mystic healer. But before we begin, if you find yourself enjoying this kind of content, first-hand, true accounts of the supernatural, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, then allow the spirits to guide your planchette to both the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I upload new content, which is twice a week, once on Monday, once on Friday, both at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Second, as I stated, all of my stories are true first-hand accounts of the supernatural and paranormal. Today's story comes from us from Redditor Consistent Hall 3085. I will make sure to link their story in the description below. But if you or anyone you know has a story and you think it would do well on my channel, please reach out to me on any of my social media so we can find the time to collect your story and potentially feature it one day here on The Orator. And now, with all of that out of the way, let's get on to today's tale. It is a story that I call The Jinn Doctor. The year is 1988, and Fatima is just a little baby who needs a blood transfusion. And they perform the operation, and seemingly everything goes successfully. She lives most of her young life without any issues whatsoever until, at 16 years old, she goes to the doctor for a routine checkup. She just has to, get some blood work done, make sure all of her vitals are okay. And during this routine checkup, the doctors inform Fatima that she has what's called hepatitis C. Hepatitis C is a blood disorder, and it happened when she had that transfusion. Now, she thankfully didn't have any symptoms, but there are a boatload of symptoms that range anywhere from very mild, stomach aches and having headaches and sweating and mild discomfort, things like that, to the extreme, which is it can attack your liver and be fatal. And so as soon as Fatima and her father found this out, they knew that they had to do everything they could to try to, if not cure this, then at least make sure it doesn't get so bad that something really terrible happens to Fatima. And so right away, they of course do what anybody would do. They seek out specialists and doctors and home remedies. Anything they can think of to fix this. And throughout the next several years, Fatima would do everything. Surgeries, major surgeries, complicated surgeries, taking medication, operations. She went through everything they could think of. And at the end of all of this, they ran her blood work, and even though she had all of these really bad side effects, she said it was almost as bad as chemo: hair loss, extreme discomfort, lack of sleep, lack of eating, getting skinny. This really wreaked havoc on her body. But despite all of that, when they re-ran her blood tests, it was still just as bad as it had been when they first discovered it. Not only did they not fix it, but they didn't dampen it or anything like that. And so Fatima and her father, they were just beside themselves. They didn't know what to do. And for years, that's just how life went, until one day, her father comes to her. And Fatima's father, he says that he has a good friend, and he just heard from him. This friend traveled to Jordan because he had cirrhosis of the liver, fatal. They gave him 6 months to live. Nobody would treat him. Nobody even knew what to do. And this guy apparently heard about this healer in Jordan. He went there, and when he came back, he was completely cured. He went to all of the doctors, and they basically just said, straightforward, it's a miracle. We don't know how this man did this. And so, Fatima hearing this, she kind of perks up because this mystic doctor, the concept of such a thing, it would be wonderful, obviously, if it's true, but what are the odds? But they've tried everything else. So worst case scenario, they go and they're in the exact same position that they're in now. Now, Fatima also had a brother who was around her age, a little bit younger, and he had type 1 diabetes. And he was born with it, obviously. That's what type 1 means, and it's basically incurable. They can do, there's a bunch of different things nowadays to be able to regulate blood sugar and take care of people. But back then, late 80s, early 90s, I mean, this was like a very debilitating problem. Diabetics, they can collapse, they can go into comas, they have to constantly regulate their blood sugar. Very, very debilitating concept. And so, her brother has diabetes, and now she has hepatitis C, and so they're all three of them are going to travel on the plane to Jordan to meet this mystic doctor. And so they fly over, and they, meet this guy, and Fatima said she wasn't sure what she was, expected when she saw him, but it wasn't what they saw, which was a young 30-year-old guy, very clean cut, looked really nice, dressed in a suit. I mean, this guy was really put together. When she heard mystical healer doctor, she was expecting maybe like robes and secrecy, but this guy seemed totally, put together and normal, except for a couple of really weird quirks that he had. One of the quirks that he had was the way that he spoke to them. When he first sat down and kind of consulted, heard about what was going on and spoke to them, he said things like, they can heal problems with the liver, but they haven't figured out how to heal diabetics yet. And so, unfortunately, I can't help your brother, or, to the dad, I can't help your son, but I can heal her and fix her liver and all of the hepatitis C problems that she's having. And just that was weird. What do they mean? What does he mean, they? He is the doctor. He is the one who's supposed to fix it. So this mystical they he's talking about, it's like he's talking about something otherworldly. And not only that, but the way he would speak, he would look past them as though he was looking at something they couldn't see. And whenever they would ask him specific questions, he would pause as though he was listening to somebody or something else. And then after a minute, he would respond almost like he was translating for somebody that they couldn't hear or couldn't understand. And so he seemed normal enough, but this was a really weird interaction because of those couple of things. And so he says, all right, I have the treatment. This is what you're going to do. I have a farmhouse in the suburbs of the city. You're going to go there. And for 3 nights, you're going to sleep at this farmhouse. Every single night, you're going to do what's called the wudu, which is, it's basically like a Middle Eastern practice, an Islamic practice of washing certain parts of your body before doing prayer and things like that. So it's like a ritualistic cleansing of the body. And so he says you're going to do that every single night, and then you're going to recite specific different passages from the Quran at specific times during the night. Right before you go to bed, you have to do it. And anytime you get up in the night, if you have to get up to go to the bathroom or something like that, there are specific verses you have to recite before you get up and right when you get back in bed. And then when you're laying in bed, you have to lay flat on your back. You can't roll over at all. And that's it. He said, you do that, and I'm going to take care of you. And they say, okay. And so that's it. That night, they get ready, and they pack all of their stuff, and they go to this farm. And Fatima, she brings her own pillow and her own blanket and sheet and everything like that. And that's pretty much it. Her dad drops her off, and, the doctor shows her inside. He's got this one room, and it's very austere. There's not a ton of different ornamental things or anything like that. It's just a couple of twin-sized beds and a pretty straightforward room. So he shows her to her room. It's already the evening. She's not going to be staying there like throughout the day. She's just coming to stay overnight at this place. And so she shows up. He shows her room. She puts everything, in its place. And then that's it. He walks her through the ritual. She does the wudu, where she washes all of the different components. Her feet, her hands, her nose, her forehead. And then after that, she sits down. She lays down for bed. She recites those things for the Quran. He leaves. Now, when she was laying there and kind of getting ready to fall asleep, she said she was so scared. Just the whole thing was so bizarre to her and so weird that she was having a hard time falling asleep, and she was really nervous, and she recited more verses in the Quran than she was supposed to. I mean, she was like, she had gone through so much, and she was praying so hard that this would be the thing that saved her. And she said after a little while, she started to finally feel sleepy. She started to drift off. And then all of a sudden, before she fell asleep, she literally felt herself rise up out of the bed. She said almost a foot off the bed she came up. She's now totally awake, totally alert, and she's laying flat on her back. And then all of a sudden, she felt this pressure specifically on her left side by her liver. And she said it felt like these hands were going into her body. And she felt pressure on her liver, in her body. She said there was no pain at all, but it was very clear pressure and movement. And this went on for a little while, and then all of a sudden she floats back down and lays back down in bed. And she said she wasn't terrified, even though she felt like she should have been. It was such a calming, relaxing, great sensation that she pretty quickly drifted off to sleep. And the next morning, she wakes up, the doctor comes in and asks her how she's going. She kind of talks through everything, and he says, yep. He calls her dad and says, all right, come get her. He comes, picks her up. He says, you do the same exact thing the next 2 nights, and everything's going to be good. And so, for the next 2 nights, she did the exact same ritual. She made sure to do the ritualistic washing, the reciting of the Quran, laying straight back on her back. And she said the next 2 nights, nothing like the first night happened, but it was like really relaxing sleep, and she started to feel really good about everything. And then that was basically it. The 3rd night finished, and the doctor, right before she left, he gave her these 3 bottles of water. He said, this is holy water, and you are supposed to drink this over basically like the next month. At specific intervals, he told her the exact times that she was supposed to drink this water. He said, you do this over the next month, and then that's it. You're cured. Everything's good. And so she goes home, and over the next month, she makes sure to very precisely drink this divine water that he's given her. And then at the end of this entire ritual, she goes back to the doctor, and she asks them if they'll do the tests again and test her blood. And sure enough, they test her blood, and not only was she completely cured, she still has hepatitis C. There's no actual cure where they could eliminate it, but they said that all of the disease from her blood was gone. She was basically cured. She's not going to experience symptoms. And they said her liver was healthier than a normal person's liver would be. When before, it was so saturated with this disease that they basically said this is a severe infection. Like, this will for sure cause problems. And now, there's no trace of it at all. And she's completely healed. And so afterwards, she's left totally stunned. She doesn't know exactly what to think. I mean, clearly something happened, something beyond her understanding. And so she talks to a few people about this. One of those people was her grandma. Now, of course, her grandma, grew up in the Middle East also. And one of the things that is very prominent in the Middle East is the concept of the jinn. Now, I have other videos on jinn, and you could go watch those videos. But basically, a jinn, or in America, we would call it like a genie, is sort of the idea. But the origin of the jinn is they're very, very old, and they're kind of mystical creatures. They're not good or evil necessarily. They can be both. They're born with the right to choose. They have their own religion. And in Islamic culture, it's like they're very prominent. A lot of people, especially older people, really believe in jinn, and that they do all sorts of things, trickery and good things and bad things. And so when she talks to her grandma just said, listen, there are certain people who are mediums for jinn, and these jinn sometimes do have mystical healing arts. They can show people how to do certain things or how to heal in certain ways. And she said she's heard of healers like that for a long time. They're, of course, not as prominent now just because of how modern everything is. She said, but she believes that's exactly what this was. Is a jinn doctor who basically was a medium who could speak and communicate with jinn and used them to heal people. Now, Fatima, after all of this time, she's 36 years old now, and she's looking back on all of this, and she says she doesn't know if it was a jinn. She doesn't know really anything other than to say she can't possibly explain the time that she went to this mystical doctor, and she was somehow miraculously, spiritually healed. And so that's going to do it for today's story. If you find yourself enjoying this or any of the stories on my channel, then please allow the spirits to guide your planchette to both the like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I upload new content, which is twice a week. Once on Monday, once on Friday, both 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Second, all of my stories are true first-hand accounts of the supernatural and paranormal. So if you or somebody you know has a story and you think it would do well on my channel, just reach out to me on any of my social media and we'll find time to collect your story and feature it one day here on the Orator. And so until next time, where you see that the fire will be stoked, you'll pull up your chair and settle in, and I will have another tale to tell.